So hello, welcome to the video and welcome to Heathrow Terminal 5. Now I didn't want to be here today. I'm travelling with Iberia down to Madrid, and when I booked, Iberia was operating from Terminal 3. And if you travel through Terminal 3 with gold card status in the British Airways Executive Club like I have, you get to experience a number of very nice lounges operated by BA's sister One World Airlines. But Iberia at some point announced that they were relocated to Terminal 5 to operate alongside British Airways. Now travelling through Terminal 5 is never a bad thing. The first wing and the first lounge are both excellent, but it's not quite the same as travelling through Terminal 3. So I'm flying down to Madrid today and I'm in economy class, but I was paying attention when I booked and I managed to find a service operated by one of their A350s. That's a wide-bodied aircraft flying on a short-haul route. Now there's a couple of reasons why airlines do this, which I'll talk about later in the video, but it's always very pleasant to experience a twin-aisled aircraft on a very short route. I also think I've got a seat in the premium economy cabin. I say think because I definitely had booked one, and I got an email overnight saying that the equipment had changed and I'd been moved back into regular economy. Well, the equipment hasn't changed, and I was able to go and amend my check-in and put myself back in the premium economy cabin. I've got a boarding pass that says 14A, but I guess I'll only really know when I get on the plane. You know what, I think I'll actually go and check in anyway, just to triple check that I've got the right seat. It'll be easier to fix any misunderstandings at the check-in desk than it will be at the gate. And I'm led to believe that the service in the first lounge at Terminal 5 has returned to its pre-pandemic level, so it'll be very interesting to see whether it indeed is back to normal. So if you'd like to see what the first swing and the first lounge is like in June 2023, and you'd like to see what Iberia's short-haul economy class is like when it's delivered in a long-haul aircraft, stick around. Hi, I'm Matt. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.4 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So subscribe to see where I go next and perhaps get some inspiration for your next trip. So the first wing is located right at the southern end of the terminal, the wrong end if you're arriving by train or tube. Yes, I am. A cursory check of your entitlements to enter is made at the threshold. You'll not get much further if you don't have the right to use the F-wing anyway, and you're through into a large check-in area. I headed to a counter to double check my seat, but even though I was travelling under a BA flight number, as it was an Iberia plane, I'd have needed to go all the way up to the other end of the terminal to the Iberia desks to check my seat. So I decided to just get on with it and see if my boarding pass beeped at any point. It didn't beep at this next checkpoint, although the chap manning it hadn't worked out that Iberia had been operating from T5 for about 2 weeks by my date of travel. He was very keen for me to go to T3, but good sense eventually prevailed and I was through into the security checkpoint. This is probably the best part of the F-wing experience. It can get busy here during the morning rush and queues are not unknown, but in my experience it's been an oasis of tranquility compared to the regular security channels. And through what feels a bit like a time tunnel into the first lounge, which is oddly named. If you were actually travelling in first, you'd have access to the Concorde room, so would pass through this space and head straight across to that superior lounge. If you're travelling in business without status, you have access to the inferior galleries lounges. Past the welcoming horse, who seems to have acquired a jacket since I last visited. So this first lounge is effectively the gold card holder lounge. Everyone in here is going to be a gold card holder and they could therefore be travelling in any cabin. BA doesn't publish how many gold card holders there are, but I've seen it suggested that there are 60,000. There may be even more, as everyone had their status extended through the you-know-what, although those extensions are now running out, so numbers are likely falling again. And it was pretty busy in there. I've seen it a lot busier, but it was probably busier than I expected at around 4 PM. I headed straight to my favourite space, which is the balcony, and poured myself a celebratory champagne. Cheers. It's usually quite pleasant out there, but it was a hot day and the air conditioning couldn't keep up, so it was uncomfortably warm. So once I'd finished my champers, I moved back inside. And it did indeed look as if the food service had returned to pre-pandemic standards, as the buffet area had been recommissioned. It didn't perhaps look amazing, but everything I tried was actually pretty good. I've heard some grumbling that people preferred the old system whereby food could be ordered through an app and would be delivered to your seat, but a buffet affords you greater control over what you choose to have, and without conducting a scientific study of the app options I had on my last visit, the buffet felt like it offered more choice. And the food was refreshed pretty quickly based on what I saw, which may alleviate some concerns that buffet food is going to be stale and dried out. The first lounge is sizeable and is split into a number of zones. This is a new area with bookable sleep pods. This is known as the champagne bar, although it's mostly a working area these days. There's a customer service desk if your flight is cancelled, and a terribly backlit coffee area. And this is the main seating space. Each seating area did still have a QR code alongside, and you were still able to order a drink and have it delivered to you. It's perhaps a little odd that food is gone from the app but drinks haven't. A way of adding value would have been for cocktails to have been offered through the app, but you could only order regular mixed drinks, which felt like an opportunity missed. And without measuring vessels and other paraphernalia, it is quite tricky to make your own cocktail if the ingredients you needed were actually available. A British summer is sometimes described as 3 hot days followed by a thunderstorm, and that proved to be true. I didn't actually notice, but there was a 10-minute downpour of rain that others described as having been quite spectacular to witness, and within minutes, flights all over the departure board started to show up as delayed. About 30 minutes before the scheduled departure of my flight, a sea gate showed up alongside a 20-minute delay. The sea gates are the furthest satellite terminal from the lounge, and it took me a while to navigate out of the lounge, through the terminal, down to the train, across in the train and back up again to the sea gates, and it seemed that every other passenger on this plane had beaten me there somehow. Boarding had started, but no one was actually going anywhere, and any separation of the Group 1 boarding channel had been completely subsumed by the volume of people pressing forwards. A quick peek out of the window revealed a BA A380 sitting on the stand rather than an Iberia A350, which could only mean one thing: a bus gate. I stood there for perhaps 15 minutes, and when there was finally an announcement, they explained that they were waiting for buses and that Group 1 passengers could come forward around the side. It was really hot standing there even after the downpour, and by executing a wee bit of officially sanctioned queue jumping, I was able to get through the boarding pass gates and was at least able to lean against a cooling window. Another 10 minutes passed, which stretched into 20. I was stood by the desks and could hear the agent's frustration that Heathrow couldn't find us any buses. Eventually a bus did show up and we could begin to shuffle towards them. I didn't even make it onto that first bus, but they'd found a second one which I was able to board. I was consoled by the opportunity to have a good look at an A380 from ground level, which you don't get to do every day. A bus gate does give you the chance to see your plane up close from ground level, which is all well and good, but at my age, with my knees, give me a boarding finger any day. Seat 14A for me today, the third row of a 3.5 row cabin, a 242 configuration with 28 seats in total. I flew on this plane with Iberia again the next day in business class, and this premium economy cabin only held 2 or 3 occupants, despite economy being rammed, so it's really not a popular option. And the seat, a lovely large screen in front of you, beneath which was a literature pocket, and noticeably free of literature, you'll notice. More on that later. Ample legroom, 37 inches I believe, with a fold down footrest that is probably just an annoyance for tall people like me. A drink shelf between seats with a recline button, headphone jack and a remote for the TV. On the other side was a really handy storage area in the left armrest. And remember, Iberia is in the IAG group, where any optional extra is considered an unnecessary extravagance, so there were no overhead air vents. The table eventually comes out of the armrest. It's easier with 2 hands and does what you'd expect. It was nice and clean too. It's even harder to put away one-handed, and actually I couldn't manage it. and a water bottle holder between the seats, which was noticeably uncontaminated by water bottles. Headphones were also handed out, actually the same noise cancelling model I enjoyed in business class the next day, which is a pretty good amenity to receive on an economy ticket. There were at least another 6 busfuls of passengers behind me, and it took another 35 minutes before boarding was complete and the stairs were wheeled away, at which point the captain announced that we had an hour's air traffic delay. 10 minutes of rain seemed to completely unhinge Heathrow's operations that day, as a stack of flights ended up getting cancelled too. So 65 minutes after the stairs were rolled away, 100 minutes after I boarded, and about 140 minutes after I'd arrived at the gate, the red manoeuvring lights started to flash and we were off. With no water or refreshment from Iberia, despite it being sweltering hot, all because of a 10-minute rainstorm. So after wagering with myself whether we would take off before this Air Canada Dreamliner, we didn't. A mere 24 minutes after pushing back from the gate, it was finally our turn to take off. Those keeping score will start to wonder whether we were in EU 261 territory here, which is the scheme under which compensation is payable when a flight is delayed. On a flight this long, you need to land 3 hours late, and although we took off 2 hours and 45 minutes late, we had a good run to Madrid and were only 2 hours and 4 minutes late landing. I think Iberia would have wriggled out of compensation anyway, as this was all probably weather related. My Iberia flight the following day was over 3 hours delayed, and I am making a claim which will inspire me to make a video about the whole EU 261 topic, which I can't say I'm looking forward to researching, but it should make for an interesting video at least. So why do airlines use wide-bodied planes on short-haul routes? Well, there's 2 main reasons. The first is that when an airline takes ownership of a new airline type, it needs to get its crews up to speed with how to operate those new planes. Landings and takeoffs are the times when things can go wrong, so those are the parts of the flight the crews need to gain experience of. So putting these new planes on short-haul routes gets crews experience with flight cycles quicker than flying long-haul routes. New aircraft types don't come along often, but I remember BA flying A380s back and forth to Madrid and Frankfurt when they first took delivery, so they are fun flights to look out for when airlines get shiny new planes. The second reason, which was today's reason, is less exotic, and it's down to freight. On freight-heavy routes such as London to Madrid, it makes sense to provision a big plane with a big freight capacity, and if you can also fill it with passengers, that's a bonus. My plane this day was rammed full, but I have a hunch that another flight to Madrid had been cancelled, so passengers had been consolidated onto this plane. Finnair also does this to Helsinki, Turkish does it to Istanbul, and I'm sure there are a few other opportunities to take wide bodies on short-haul routes because of freight volumes. A long-haul plane, so it had a long-haul in-flight entertainment system. It was quite good, not perhaps the best you'll find in the sky, but there were plenty of movies and TV options. A nicely responsive touchscreen too, no complaints here. So this was a fancy seat on a fancy plane, but it was still an economy flight, and part of the IAG group's stinginess extends to there being no complimentary in-flight service, despite all of us having sweltered through the boarding process for nearly 3 hours, such that many of us could really have done with some water. Nope, can't give water away if we can sell it. I'm sure I could have asked for some, but I didn't know what else I could buy, as the literature rack had no menu. There was in-flight Wi-Fi which teased you with the prospect of a menu, but that took you to Iberia's main website, where you needed to enter flight details and dates so you could see what was offered in business. A menu for that day could have been there, but I couldn't find it. From seeing the trolley go past, I could see it contained all the usual sort of stuff, but I wasn't hungry, and some water and a snack had somehow fallen into my bag when I was in the lounge, so I made do with that. And I sat in my luxurious economy seat for the 1 hour and 46 minutes it took to get down to Madrid, and we duly landed just after midnight. The delay was irritating, although our responsibility for that falls between Heathrow not coping with a bit of rain and losing all of its buses, and Iberia not being able to negotiate to get a proper jet bridge, is moot, as we landed within 3 hours of the scheduled arrival time. I paid £67.18 for this flight, which I think is an outstanding price. You won't find a better seat on an economy class flight from London to Madrid. You will find better service, but a long-haul plane on a short-haul route is always going to trump any other aspect of service. and I took a screenshot of the pricing options I was presented. I'm often asked how to determine whether the part pay with Avio's options are worth taking, so here's a worked example of what I was offered. You need the cash price as well as the various Avio's options. And as you can see, the best option valued each Avio at 0.48p each, well under half the rate I would be interested in taking. So I paid the full fare in cash. You'll also notice that the last two options have a higher cash component than the fare itself, which is what I call the moron zone. Obviously, don't take either of those options. It's odd that BA will offer that, but BA's IT is terrible, and I'm guessing that it is a standardised table based around an average fare for that route. 67 quid is a very cheap fare, but if that cash fare was up around £150, then the part pay with Avio's option might start to make sense, provided a redemption seat is available, of course. I'll talk about Madrid airport in next week's video, as I ended up spending quite a lot of time there, but suffice it to say, it's big. Certainly Terminal 4, where Iberia operates from, is really big. Even so, and with apologies for there being so many time checks in this video, I got from the plane door to the terminal exit in 16 minutes. I'd not checked any bags, so wasted no time at the carousels, but did still have a passport check and a train ride in that time. And the last courtesy bus to my hotel had long gone, meaning I had to stump up €25 for a taxi to that hotel. At least my driver was a complete maniac, so he made an otherwise dull journey quite exciting. I'll make a summary video about this entire trip, which will include some stuff about the places I visited, so I'll talk more about the hotel I stayed in that video. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Will you now be looking out for long haul flights on short haul routes? Let me know in the comments if you will be. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, consider subscribing, and if you'd like to support what I'm doing more directly, there is a Patreon account, the link to which is in the description below. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.